welcome to this new episode of Tracks. So this is a playlist where I talk about my hikes or my experiences in the real world. So they're not so artistically focused as usual, or not as technically focused, but they just talk about the experience. As you can see on the map, I'm doing the Trail of Lourdes. That's in the middle of Switzerland, in the German side of Switzerland, a little bit to the north, but quite central in the Jura mountains. And that's a natural park of Thal. And it's the Trail of Lourdes because there's supposed to be statues, religious statues, and one of them is in a grotto. And so let's go see a few images. Here we're in the Jura mountains, in the German side of Switzerland, south of Basel. Beautiful sceneries. I'm going for a photo hike. I'm going to try to discover a few things and take some photos. And I think this tractor is going to be taken. So, as you can see, as you have seen on the map, I'm going to go up in the mountains and go do this Trail of Lourdes and see what we see and discover it. And that was the occasion to work with a Hasselblad 500 cm and lomography Metropolis film, which I set to 100 ISO. Well, I will expose my film to 100 ISO. I will work with an SL2 and a 100mm TT Artisan bubblebokeh f2.8 lens at the time, which was pretty recent. Working also with Voigtlander Vito C camera with expired Lucky film from China. And finally, that was one of my experiences with DP2 Merrill from Sigma camera, which has a Foveon sensor which doesn't have the Byron filter on it. So here on the left, that's the first picture, and actually it's the only one because I messed up something on my Hasselblad of a tractor. You see the colors from the lomography film, and interesting picture. I was just starting. The rest of the film has been not exposed, so I don't know what I messed up or if mechanically the shutter just broke down at that point. And here on the right, that's with the SL2 and the 100mm TT Artisan. You can see the very different rendering, both from the 100mm f3.5 lens from Hasselblad on the left, with this medium format 6x6 surface, and the full frame SL2 from Leica, using this 100mm f2.8 lens. Very different rendering, not very artistically interesting, but anyways. Here, two pictures. I didn't take that many pictures with the Vito C camera, with this expired film on the right, but it's a time of the year when they're actually working a lot on the fields. And on the left, that's with the DP2 Merrill, and basically the Vito C on the right. I've just done recently a video about the Vito C, very interesting camera. I recommend you go and see it if you're interested. As you can see, there's a problem with this expired film, but which makes it interesting with those small red dots, probably oxidation, not sure, but nonetheless a very interesting rendering. Not very artistic, I said previously in the introduction, actually. But you know, when you go to take pictures here, I wanted to test and experiment with my equipment, do a hike at the same time, enjoy the place. It was worth it. The pictures are kind of boring in my opinion, but it gives you an idea of the differences. Here's the SL2 on the left with the TT Artisan 100mm bubblebokeh, the DP2 Merrill on the right. Very different rendering of colors. The lenses are definitely not the same. The DP2, there's the DP1, DP2, DP3. They have fixed focal lengths. This is basically a 45 to 50mm equivalent for full frame. But this sensor on the right really gives something different. Beautiful mountains. Here we can see also the valley. Like always, a hike is probably a good moment to take some pictures. It's also a pretext to do the hike, and actually what's most important is not finding photos today, but probably the hike itself, the experience, and that moment
you share with yourself.
Here again a comparison between the SL2 and the 100mm bubble bokeh on the left and the DP2 Merrill on the right. That tends to go on the color is not exactly like it should be. Hard to say. I don't really know this camera that well, but the magenta is kind of strong and hard to correct. It's really dependent of the light conditions. Slowly hiking up the mountain. Here on the left it's SL2, the bubble bokeh 100mm, and the right DP2 Merrill. As you can see, again, very different rendering. We can see the highlights or the lowlights seem to be a little bit tight on, I don't know how to name that, on the Sigma. But there's a very good micro contrast. While the bubble bokeh lens on the left sort of gives a more dreamy look to the scene. I'm not really sure which one I like most. The pictures in themselves are not that interesting to me, but I think the DP2 Merrill really has this organic way of expressing things, and while it's hard to really get it to work in tough light conditions, as we're going to see later, very interesting camera nonetheless with this great lens.
I had kind of looked online, that's a great thing about internet, and we're going to the grotto of Lourdes. Basically that's the small pass here. I'm going to climb up. And we're here, it's so calm, it's a beautiful sunny day. It's just perfect conditions. Let's go check a bit more of those mountains and this Lourdes grotto. This Lourdes grotto. When you do landscape photography, there's many kinds. The ones where you really plan on something very special, and the ones where it's kind of an improvisation. And then it depends on your style. It's always a good thing to use it to try to figure out new ideas, or try to resolve a thematic you have in your mind, or simply exercise your technical abilities. But in any case, it's quite something I would recommend you. Go for the hike, take pictures if you can, prepare for it, but don't be disappointed if you don't. You always take one or two that will be good souvenirs. And the process itself of walking in nature is always something positive.
So yeah, going up the trail, this Lourdes trail, there are some religious icons on the way, as we can see on the right. Again, I have the abbreviations for the equipment used over the pictures. As you can see, again, very different rendering. Highlights are hard to contain with the Foveon sensor, with this Foveon sensor, it seems. But yeah, interesting, very different rendering in any case.
It's basically an artwork, religious, but there's another one here. So interesting. It's not my main reason for being here. Again, what I was saying, it's a great pretext just to come and discover new places, find new vibes, maybe simply discover things and enjoy it. And so we're going to continue going upwards.
Going up, there's lots of those icons on the trail. That's why it's named Trail of Lourdes. And here, the picture on the left, again, SL2 with bubble bokeh lens. On the right, the DP2 Merrill. For the first picture, we can see this sort of radiating glow on the highlights, which is kind of the characteristics of this lens. And on the right, on this picture, on this occasion, the light was pretty good, and the rendering is really great. And I think I actually prefer it. It resembles more the reality compared to SL2. while going up, it was kind of hard because it was really kind of steep, very thin passway, very few openings on the sceneries. Very nice to experiment in real life, but hard to take pictures of. So there's always a forefront with branches or things like that. So as you can see on the left, but you can still take some kind of anonymous, not really location specific pictures on the right. But this gives a good idea of the, when I'm testing my lenses, gave me a good idea of the kind of bokeh, non-bubbly bokeh the lens could have.
This is the grotto. So a little bit further on my pass, I discovered this really very nice place. It's a small river. Sadly, I can't go into the grotto. It's there was a landslide, but you can see here the water flowing down this really thin and steep river, and this beautiful scenery around here. Wilderness, really great. It's still a little bit wet, so I'm not adventuring myself trying to get into that grotto, but the whole panel on top of it basically slid, so I'm not sure if it's yet safe. And yeah, I'm not here for the strongest adventure.
So here again, both pictures are with the DP2 Merrill. On the left, it gives an idea of how it renders. The contrast is really good. There's a really good definition to this lens, and the sensor works pretty well when the light conditions are good. On the right, same camera basically. As you can see, the low lights tend to distort in terms of colors, going towards magenta. And that, sadly for me, was the grotto, but I couldn't access because there had been a landslide because of heavy rains in the past days. So not safe to go there, but still took a picture. So definitely no artistic pictures here, but just kind of an illustration using the cameras. Comparing the two cameras, as we can see here, the DP2 Merrill on the left and SL2 with a 100mm TT Artisan lens. Very different rendering, both in colors and the way it manages the glows, and that's really the combination of the sensor and the lens as usual. Not very artistic, but just to give an idea of how well your focal length is important when you're stuck on a very thin trail and can't really back up or forward. And maybe in those cases zoom lenses are nice, and I'll remove them maybe.
Hiking is also those moments where you just don't take pictures. You just look at the sky, enjoy, and yeah, listen to silence.
Here both pictures are taken with the SL2 and the bubblebokeh lens. It really shines when you have those kinds of contrast or those kind of compositions. Where on the right you can see this bubblebokeh look of the optical formula, or on the left how it resists this really high contrast situation, and how the bokeh actually isn't that much bubbly when you use it correctly, but can be really interesting. Very poetic in my opinion. Here to compare also on the left, that's the DP2 Merrill. When the light situation is better, you can see that the sensor really has a very nice rendering capacity, and the colors are great, the definition is great. Actually, I kind of prefer them to the SL2 with the 100mm bubblebokeh lens, which tends to make everything a little bit more dreamy. And I think the color rendering of the Merrill is very interesting in that situation, more resembling the real scene. Here again a good example of the DP2 Merrill's capacity to render something very organic, very analog in terms of the image rendering. It looks more like film than digital, and this combination really shines when you have the good conditions. That's going up, continuing to go up on the trail.
Just a reminder, for those who do landscape photography and go a little bit like me, wandering quite randomly, here this small hike was climbing for about 3 kilometers, which was pretty steep, with something like 30 pounds, 15 kilos of equipment in my backpack, of cameras, whatever. So just a small reminder, I always do that, but always take drinks with you, maybe something like 1 liter, a quarter of a gallon, and some dried fruits and nuts. Take more calories than necessary, more liquids than necessary. Oh, butterflies. Let's try to catch one. Woohoo! So yeah, always take more liquids and calories than necessary. That's when you might need them most. So lots of butterflies here. That's so cool.
A comparison on that trail with the DP2 Merrill on the left was this really nice rendering when you start getting used to what conditions are okay for this camera. And on the right, that's simply an example, basically almost the same place, a little bit further, using the SL2 and the 100mm lens. This more dreamy, with less depth of field. Very interesting rendering for this 100mm bubble bokeh lens. Even so, it's not one of my favorite, but definitely potent. And here, basically, the two pictures I felt were a little bit more artistic, more interesting. That's with the bubble bokeh lens, the SL2. When I get to the top of the trail, suddenly the landscapes open up. That's a picture on the left. And you can have this it was very contrasty. So the SL2 sensor which does pretty well, and those conditions was great to capture the scene. And the 100mm really gave it an old school look, which I really liked. And going back the trail, you could see the farmers still working, and the sun's a little lower, a little warmer. But that's where the combination of the SL2 and the 100mm bubble bokeh lens felt good to me. Again, both with the SL2 and the 100mm lens. This bubble effect on the right, I'm completely out of focus, but just to give an example in high contrast situations. And on the left, rendering in this pass, going back down, it gets greener and a really nice hike. And I think that's also maybe something I want to say here is I'm not very satisfied about the final results of this hike. Both because my Hasselblad didn't work out how I expected. I didn't do as much pictures as I thought I would with the Vito C camera. And basically, no real occasion to make something really interesting, and I maybe wasn't in the mood. But it was still a great hike, so it's part of the experience. Really nice. On the left, just the DP2 Merrill, giving a really nice and accurate rendition of the lights at that time of the day. And that's where I think this camera really shines. I'm looking forward to have more experience with it. I've done some previously. I'm going to do more in the future. I'll probably join it with the DP3 and some other Foveon camera, but really nice experience. Nice to handle too. And going back to the village of Laupersdorf on the right, where this 100mm lens tends to be kind of cold, I believe, in terms of colors, and doesn't have much character besides its bokeh, but still works well, and gives an old school style to her pictures. And yeah, very nice trail. And here, two pictures with the SL2 and the 100mm that I find more artistic, but nonetheless not very interesting per se, of the grass, making a wall, the farmers putting the grass as such on the hills, and on the left a cornfield with the sun in the background. This 100mm lens is actually pretty potent in general, kind of old school, but works pretty well. I'll do a video about it in the future.